applied the concept of opportunity costs to psychology. It's the cost of missing out on another preferred activity that makes self-control so hard for us. To give you an example, when I was a child, I was taking these piano lessons, but I never wanted to practice. So I was basically the nightmare of every tiger mom. But it wasn't simply the case that I didn't enjoy practicing the piano. Rather, my opportunity cost got in the way, not being able to play with the other children. And practicing in light of these opportunity costs made practicing the piano more effortful. A year ago, I conducted a study with 400 students from different fields and employees from various professions. It was a study on work-life balance, and they received a survey 7 times a day over the course of an entire week. And I asked them 3 things. Whether, how happy they were at any given moment, whether they were engaging in work or leisure, and whether they were experiencing opportunity costs. What I expected to find was what we call a curvilinear relationship. People would be unhappy when they worked too much, but they should also be unhappy with too little work. But there would be the sweet spot in the middle, the moderate amount of work where people would be the happiest. But this wasn't at all what I found. What I actually found was a strong negative relationship between happiness and work. People were the happiest with a low amount of work, and the more they worked, the happier they became. Interestingly, one influencing factor was the perception of opportunity costs. When at work, participants indicated they'd rather spend the time doing something else, such as spending it with people that matter to them. Engaging in labor's activities that they ought to do, they had to forgo the opportunity to engage in leisurely activities that they want to do. And when we looked at the breakdown of their exact opportunity costs, they were hardly ever about work. Most of the times, they were about leisure-related activities, such as hobbies, time for the self, and time for other people. And this resonates pretty well with research that has looked at regrets of the dying. So among the many things that people regret the most when they die is the extent to which they traded the opportunity to socially connect for work. I wish I'd worked less. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd spent more time with my family. These regrets on deathbeds all crave for human connection, and what the longest study on happiness, going for over 75 years now, shows is that the most satisfied people and the most happy people are the ones in stable relationships. And when we look around at social media that has revolutionized the internet and the way we communicate, which is basically just a modern expression of our innate desire to be connected to other people. But relationships take time, something we believe we may not always have in our busy lives. As a society, we value work over play, productivity over laziness, self-discipline over slacking. We say children should be allowed to play, but we forget this when we're adults. So as a consequence, on an average workday, we spend 8.9 hours doing something work-related and only 2.5 hours doing something leisure-related, which means only 2.5 hours for hobbies, for ourselves, and for other people. That's the Japanese word karoshi. It means death from being overworked, and it's a serious issue in Japan. In my work, I've also looked at workaholism and opportunity costs. A workaholic is a person who works compulsively. It's not a healthy condition, as you may imagine, and may lead to karoshi or other negative health-related consequences. We may not always die. And what I found was that people who scored high on workaholism were more likely to experience opportunity costs in the opposite direction, feeling that they were missing out on work when they were taking a break. A woman once said, "It feels undisciplined. It feels wasteful. I don't know if I will do such thing ever again." What awful thing you believe this woman did. Well, she watched a movie on Netflix for the first time and felt guilty about it. Isn't it a weird moral system in which one may feel guilty about being unproductive? And as a society, We have an all too moralistic view of productivity thanks to what is called capitalism and the Protestant work ethic, which is the idea that God praises the ones only who produce and devote their lives to labor. As Max Weber wrote, loss of time through sociability, idle talk, luxury, even more sleep than necessary, 6 to at most 8 hours is worthy of absolute moral condemnation. Hard work, performance, and diligence, when signs of grace and salvation, have turned into aspired values in themselves so that we spend our lives contributing to the GDP instead of enjoying it, and accept time poverty as a necessary condition for employment. So in the beginning I asked the question, why are we designed in a way that self-control is effortful? I believe there's a reason. It's for our own good to experience opportunity costs, because they serve as a signal that tells us to switch from labor to leisure, from work to life. And I believe we can be just as productive when we take a break, when we build relationships, when we're socially active online or in real life, because this is what may benefit us in the long run. If you're an employer, you may wonder, okay, what can you possibly do to increase your employees' happiness? And I think there are 3 things you can possibly do to minimize your employees' opportunity costs. The first recommendation is to have a lot of paid holidays. 30 at a minimum. I think we're not doing bad in Germany, where the average person has 29, but with 20 being the minimum, I think we could do better. And there's some countries where 10 is the minimum, which I think is too little. My second recommendation would be on-site opportunities to play games or sports or other form of hobbies, so that your employees can take a leisurely break whenever necessary. And my third recommendation is make no emails on evenings or on weekends a rule, because this is time to unwind and to relax. And I think these recommendations are important because nothing, neither work nor play, is more valuable than the other. In order to flourish in life, we need both. We need careers and accomplishments on the one side, but also play and relationships on the other side. So for all these years, I've been searching the holy grail of self-control, but the realization of opportunity costs has shifted my perspective, and I hope today it has also shifted yours. Opportunity is a currency, and we should spend it well. So I want to leave you with 3 takeaways. Focus on relationships. Rethink the value that you place on work. And self-control failure is not always a failure. It helps us to prevent karoshi and lets us take part in this adventure called life. Thank you.
So I was on a roll. I was an executive with a nice salary, annual bonuses and stock options, all the perks. Everything was on track. And on Monday, January 7th, 2008,
David, how are you?
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a small conference room on the top floor of our building, the president of the company wanted to have a quick meeting with me, which wasn't unusual since he was my boss. But the meeting turned out to be even more brief than expected. He fired me.
Okay.
And I'll never forget how his words just sucked the breath right out of me. And I left the conference room in a dazed state. And I went home and curled up in my bed in the fetal position for 3 hours. And while I could go on into the detail about how I felt, what I did to my self-esteem, my finances, and so on, what I now realize is while that event created the greatest amount of discomfort I had ever felt, it was that discomfort the departure from my ordered life that forever changed it for the better. You see, friends, what makes you comfortable can ruin you.
Okay, let me know.
And what makes you uncomfortable is the only way to grow. Let me say that again. What makes you comfortable can ruin you, and only in a state of discomfort can you continually grow. Now, I suppose if on January 8th, somebody come up and said, gee, buddy, getting fired is a good thing, because now you're really going to grow. I probably would have smacked them. But pretty quickly, I became motivated to start a new journey. And after a couple of years of work with my new team and a PhD friend at the University of Nebraska, we had this epiphany on how to illustrate and apply the science of discomfort and growth. We called the concept the growth rings. The growth rings represent living environments that promote or hinder growth. And that includes everything from your place of work to even a fishbowl. You see, what dictates the size of a goldfish is its environment. And while this goldfish lives in a very safe environment, it's also very limiting in most every way. And when placed in a more robust environment, like say a small pond, this can be the result. Now it also means he could be eaten. But friends, this is you. The environments in which you work, live, and play, they're all a proverbial fishbowl that dictates your growth. So the first growth ring represents a low-performing, low-growth environment called stagnation. Stagnation is understood by having to follow too many steps and permissions and minutiae that stifles creativity, independent thought, and action. To imagine an environment such as this, think no further than our state and federal governments. Now, the antithesis of stagnation is chaos, also low growth and low performing. Chaos can be caused by internal or external events or conditions. We see chaos occur at times in business mergers, natural disasters, and horrific events like 9/11. Chaos is having zero predictability or control over inputs and outcomes. Coming back down the growth rings, next to stagnation is the most desirable environment, order. Order is knowing that what you do or what is happening in your environment leads to a predictable outcome. And in predictability, comfort is found. But comfort is also what makes order so dangerous. Because science shows that anytime you continually do something or even think about something the same way, you'll eventually stop growing. And this applies to every living thing, even our dog. You see, if Aspen had a chance, she'd choose comfort 6 days a week and twice on Sundays. But too much growth-limiting order would have prevented her from becoming a therapy dog. And had this been allowed, think of the lives this gentle soul would not be touching today. So before your order continues to limit the way you think and act, remember what I said earlier. Growth only occurs in a state of discomfort. Now think about the power of that phrase. Growth only occurs in a state of discomfort. I can unequivocally state I wouldn't be standing on this stage today without my uncomfortable, order-disrupting day 9 years ago. By the way, I'm not recommending you go get fired, see if it leads to a TED Talk, but when you feel discomfort hit, that means you've entered the complexity ring. Complexity is nothing more than changed order. But when your order is changed, outcomes are no longer predictable. And it's unpredictability that makes you uncomfortable. And well, most times, your visceral response to discomfort is not just no, but hell no. You can actually learn how empowering it is to consciously acknowledge discomfort and then, when appropriate, choose complexity over order. And I know seeking discomfort sounds odd, and not many people do it. But you have to learn to embrace it, because it's the only environment where sustained or exponential growth can occur. Okay, to weave high growth complexity into the fabric of your lives, there are 3 primary ways it can be triggered. Complexity trigger number 1 is it can be forced upon you. When I got fired, I didn't have a chance to stay in order. Complexity was selected for me. And when this happens, how much you grow depends on how you respond to it. Now, I could have remained angry. I could have used it as an excuse. But what I actually learned is that I suck as an employee. And I'm much better off accepting the risks of running my own company. Complexity trigger number 2. Someone can help you get there. This is the role of parents, teachers, coaches, and bosses. Because left on their own, people will consciously or subconsciously select the comfort of order. And they then need to be pushed into complexity in order to continue growing. My youngest daughter spent most of her high school life training to play tennis. And her coach was pretty familiar with our work on complexity and the growth rings. So I called him up one day to check on Maddie's progress, and I was able to phrase my question like this. I said, "Hey, Lee, how long has it been since Maddie's been pushed deep into complexity?" Lee's response, "Funny you'd ask, Bill. We got there yesterday. She broke down into tears on the tennis court." Well, knowing how tough my daughter is, and the fact that she never cries, told me she was deep into complexity. But friends, this is where critical developmental decisions are made, because the old Bill, the pre-growth ring Bill, would have intervened and wanted to know what was making her so uncomfortable. Then I would have done everything I could to try and get her happy again. What I really would have been doing is removing the complexity and putting her in order. I actually would have been stifling her development. But the new post-growth ring Bill relished in his daughter's discomfort. And it was the coach's next words that told me everything I needed to hear. He said, "But Bill, I gotta tell you, it took a heck of a lot more to get her to the limits of complexity this month than it did last month. Discomfort was causing her growth." Okay, but what if you're not lucky enough to live or work in a robust high growth environment? What if you're stuck in order, even worse, stagnation? Well, the great news is everyone can trigger complexity at any time. So complexity trigger number 3, trigger it yourself. Take a journey with me back to Montgomery, Alabama in the 1950s. Imagine, if you will, a young girl who's black, and she attends an all-black high school. And she takes a city bus to get there and home, which wasn't unusual in that era. And on March 2nd, 1955, she boards the bus to come home from school, and she sits near the back in the first row of seats where blacks were allowed to sit. And as the bus continues to fill with white people, there's eventually no more room in the front of the bus. And according to local law, she needed to move further back to create room for white people to sit. You see, Montgomery had an order in place that, when followed, led to a very predictable outcome: repression of people with little conflict. But 15-year-old Claudette Colvin had just spent the last month in high school studying black history, and she was understandably fed up with the historic and existing atrocities. And so on this day, she decided she didn't like Montgomery's order. And by refusing to give up her seat, she sent a community, our laws, and our entire country into complexity. Yes, 9 months before Rosa Parks made her famous decision to stay put, it was a 15-year-old girl that was handcuffed, dragged from the bus, and taken to prison. It was Miss Colvin, not Rosa Parks, who first fought the law, and by the way, was also the star plaintiff to testify in the famous lawsuit that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, I use Claudette's actions not to heighten awareness of race issues, although that's not necessarily bad, but I use it as an example of every issue, of every situation in an ordered environment. It's a real and perfect example of complexity forcing people, our communities, and our courts into discomfort, and the downstream impact that can occur anytime someone elects to move from order. Dr. Serene Jones in a recent book, summarizes this concept very eloquently. She said, "The constant facade of order hides the wilderness that is craving to seep out and teach us that life wasn't created to be what we think it is. Beyond words, we must experience the wilderness to be taught what cannot be otherwise known." So friends, it's not the discomfort of losing a job. It's not having a child break down on the tennis courts, but it's order you should fear the most, because it is a threat. And order disrupting people like Jesus, Galileo, Claudette Colvin, Aspen's trainer, and maybe even a few of you have already proven. Now think about this. It's not the complexity triggering individuals or events you should fear the most, but it's your own willingness to accept or seek discomfort that will dictate the growth of not just you, but our entire world. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Bigger welcome. Hello, San Francisco. TEDx. Oh my God, blinding light. Hi, everybody. How are you? Fine. Oh my gosh. Okay, so my name is Mel Robbins, and for the last 17 years, I have done nothing but help people get everything that they want. Within reason. My husband's here. And so I've done it in the courtroom, in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in people's living room, whatever room you want to be in. If I'm there, I will help you get whatever you want by any means necessary. For the last 3 years, I host a syndicated radio show. 5 days a week, I go live in 40 cities, and I talk to men and women across America who feel stuck. Do you know that 1/3 of Americans feel dissatisfied with their lives right now? That is 100 million people. That's insane. And I've come face to face with it in this new show that I'm doing, which is also insane. It's called In-Laws. I move in with families across America. You guessed it, who are at war with their in-laws. We move them into the same house. I verbally assassinate everybody. We open up Pandora's box, and I get people to stop arguing about the donuts and who's hosting Thanksgiving dinner and talk about the real stuff. And that's what I want to talk to you about. I'm here for you. I'm going to tell you everything I know in less than 18 minutes about how to get what you want. So I want you to take a millisecond right now, and I want you to think about what you want. You. And I want you to be selfish. Screw Simon and the we thing. This is about me. Right now. Sorry, Simon. What do you want? And here's the deal. I don't want it to sound good to other people. Being healthy will not get your ass on a treadmill. Losing your man boobs so you could hook up with somebody? Now that's motivation. So I want to know, what do you want? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to triple your income? Do you want to start a nonprofit? Do you want to find love? What is it? Get it right here. You know what it is. Don't analyze it to death. Just pick something. That's part of the problem. You won't pick. So we're going to be talking about how you get what you want. And frankly, getting what you want is simple. But notice I didn't say it was easy. It's very simple. In fact, if you think about it, we live in the most amazing moment in time. So that thing that you have up here, whatever it may be, you want to use healthy eating to cure your diabetes, You want to figure out how to take care of the elders and start a new hospice center. You want to move to Africa and build a school. Guess what? You could walk into a bookstore right now and buy at least 10 books written by credentialed experts on how the hell you do it. You could Google it, and you could probably find at least, I don't know, 1,000 blogs documenting the step-by-step transformation that somebody else is already doing. You can find anybody online and cyberstalk them. You can just walk in their footsteps and let them, just use the science of drafting. Follow what everyone else has done, because somebody else is already doing it. So why don't you have what you want? When you have all the information that you need, you have the contacts that you need, there are probably free tools online that allow you to start a business or join a group or do whatever the heck you want. It all comes down to one word.
Mm-hmm. What?
Shut the front door. You know what I'm talking about?
Ask your
The
sister
F-bomb.
to
It's everywhere.
sort out.
You hear it all the time, and I honestly don't understand what the appeal is of the word. I mean, you don't sound smart when you say it. And it's really not expressing how you really feel. It's sort of a cheap, shot to take. And of course, I'm talking about the word fine. How you doing? I'm fine. Oh, really? You are? Dragging around those extra 40 pounds? You're fine? Feeling like roommates with your spouse? You're fine? You haven't had sex in 4 months? You're fine? Really? I don't think so. But see, here's the deal with saying that you're fine. It's actually genius. Because if you're fine, you don't have to do anything about it. But when you think about this word fine, it just makes me so angry. I mean, here we are at a conference about being alive, and you're going to describe the experience of being alive as fine? What a flimsy and feeble word. If you're crappy, say you're crappy. If you're amazing, say you're amazing. Tell the truth. And this not only goes for the social construct, I don't want to burden you with the fact that I hate my life, or, hey, I'm amazing, but that would make you feel terrible. The bigger issue with fine is that you say it to yourself. That thing that you want, I guarantee you, you've convinced yourself that you're fine not having it. That's why you're not pushing yourself. It's the areas in your life where you've given up, where you've said, oh, I'm fine. My mom's never going to change, so I just can't have that conversation. I'm fine. We got to wait until the kids graduate before we get divorced, so we'll just sleep in separate bedrooms. I'm fine. I lost my job. I can barely pay my bills, but whatever. It's hard to get a job. And, one of the reasons why this word also just annoys me so much is scientists have calculated, oh yeah, I'm coming down. Scientists have calculated the odds of you being born. That's right. They've crunched the numbers. I see you up there. They've crunched the numbers on you. Yeah, no, you guys standing up, you want to sit down for this. They've crunched the numbers on you being born. And they took into account all of the wars and the natural disasters and the dinosaurs and everything else. And do you realize that the odds of you, yeah, right here, put your computer away, stand up for me, Doug. So the odds of Doug here, turn around, say hi to everybody. The odds, of Doug being born at the moment in time he was born, to the parents you were born to, with the DNA structure that you have, 1 in 400 trillion. Isn't that amazing?
I'm so lucky.
Yes. You're not fine, you're fantastic. You have life-changing ideas for a reason, and it's not to torture yourself. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. You know, Christine was right when she said all of you could be on stage, because all of you, we're all in this category. 1 and 400 trillion. All day long, you have ideas that could change your life, that could change the world, that could change the way that you feel. And what do you do with them? Nothing. Oh, hopefully I won't moon you. You didn't pay for that. And I want you to just think for a minute. Because we all have, I love to use the analogy, the inner snooze button. You have these amazing ideas that bubble up, right? You've been watching people all day, and I guarantee you, like, you know, ping pong balls, boom, 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 boom. You got an idea, let's do this, do that, and every time you have an idea, what do? Boop, hit the snooze. What's the first decision you made this morning? I bet it was to go back to bed. Yeah, first decision today. I'm 101 and 400 trillion. I'm going to go back to sleep. And I get it. Your bed is comfortable. It's cozy. It's warm. If you're lucky, you've got, you know, like somebody that you love next to you. Or in my case, I've got my husband and my 2 kids and possibly the dog. And the reason why I'm bringing up this first decision that you made today and the inner snooze alarm is because in any area of your life that you want to change, there's one fact that you need to know. Just one. You're never going to feel like it. Ever. No one's coming. Motivation isn't happening. You're never going to feel like it. Scientists call it activation energy. That's what they call the force required to get you to change from what you're doing on autopilot to do something new. So try this test tomorrow. You think you're so fancy. I know you're attending TED. Try this. Tomorrow morning, set your alarm for 30 minutes earlier. And then when it goes off, take those sheets, throw them off, and stand up and start your day. No snooze, no delay, no I'll just wait here for 5 seconds because Mel's not standing here. Do it. And the reason why I want you to do it is because you will come face to face with the physical, and I mean physical, force that's required to change your behavior. Do you think that somebody who needs to lose weight ever feels like going on a diet? Of course not. Do you think they ever feel like eating boiled chicken and peas instead of a croissant? I don't think so. The activation energy required to get your ass away from your computer and out your front door to go on the walk you said that you were going to go on is the exact same amount of force that it takes you to push yourself out of a warm bed and into a cold room. What's interesting about being an adult is that when you become 18, nobody tells you that it's now going to be your job to parent yourself. And by parent yourself, I mean it's your job to make yourself do the crap you don't want to do so you can be everything that you're supposed to be. And you're so damn busy waiting to feel like it. And you're never going to. My son never feels like getting off his DS. That's my job. Get off the damn DS. Kendall, clean up the Barbies. If you're going to have a nude party in my bathroom, at least clean it up. God, chew with your mouth closed. We're on a barn for crying out loud. All right, dinner's coming. Get out of the pantry. As parents, and you were a kid, your parents make you do the things you don't feel like doing. Because you won't. Ever. Not now, not then, not ever. And even when you get good at something, you'll figure out something else you don't want to do. And then you'll plateau out and you'll get bored and you're like, I hate this stuff. It's boring. But will you look for new? No. You'll just bitch about that one. It's very, very simple to get what you want. But it's not easy. You have to force yourself. And I mean force. And the reason why I use the word force, when Roz is up here and talking about the emotion tracking, and she had the picture of the two sides of the brain, I look at the brain the exact same way. Only I describe one side of your brain as autopilot and the other side is emergency brake. That's the only two speeds you get. Autopilot, emergency brake. And guess which one your brain likes better? Autopilot. You've had the experience where you've driven to work, right? And you get there and you're like, oh my God, I don't remember driving here. You weren't drunk. That was your brain on autopilot. It was functioning just at this level. And the problem with your mind is that anytime you do anything that's different from your normal routine, guess what your brain does? Emergency brake. And it has that reaction for everything. Everything. You walk into the kitchen and you see everybody's left their breakfast dishes for you. And you think for the 100th time, I'm going to kill them. In fact, I'm going to leave them here and I'm going to make them do it. But that's not your normal routine, is it? So your mind goes, emergency brake. And you go right into autopilot. I'll just load it and be pissed. And then not have sex. That's what I'm going to do. So when I say force, anything that's a break from your routine is going to require force. And if you think about your life, it's kind of funny because we, are kids and then we become adults and we spend so much time trying to push our life into some sort of stable routine. And then we grow bored of it. You wake up at, the same time every day. You have largely the same breakfast. You drive to work the same way. You show up at work. You look busy. You avoid making calls. You update Facebook. You attend a meeting and doodle the whole time. You go back and update Facebook. You make plans for the evening. You look busy some more. Then you drive home the same way, eat largely the same dinner or, variety of it. You watch the same kind of media. And then you go to bed and do the same thing all over again. No wonder you're bored out of your mind. It's the routine that's killing you. I have this theory about why people get stuck in life. So most of you have probably taken your basic Psych 101 class and you've bumped into Andrew Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, your body is kind of cool because you have these basic needs. And your body is wired to send you signals. If you are hungry, if you need food, what do you feel? If you need water, what do you feel? If you need sex, what do you feel? Thank you. I think when you feel stuck or dissatisfied in your life, it's a signal. And it's not a signal that your life is broken. It's a signal that one of your most basic needs are not being met. Your need for exploration. Everything about your life, about your body, grows. Your cells regenerate, your hair, your nails, everything grows for your entire life. And your soul needs exploration and growth. And the only way you'll get it is by forcing yourself to be uncomfortable. Forcing yourself to get outside. Out of your head, thank you. If you're in your head, you're behind enemy lines. That is not God talking, okay? It's not. In fact, if I put a speaker on it and we broadcast what you say to yourself, we would institutionalize you. You would not hang out with people that talk to you the way you talk to yourself. So get out of your head. Your feelings are screwing you. I don't care how you feel. I care about what you want. And if you listen to how you feel when it comes to what you want, you will not get it. Because you will never feel like it. And you need to get outside your comfort zone. It's not about taking risks. It's about getting outside your comfort zone. Those first 3 seconds when you push yourself out of bed, they blow. But once you're up, it's great. Those first 3 seconds when you're sitting here in a studio or a stadium like this and somebody says, get up and come dance, and you think, oh, I should do that. And you're like, oh. That experience that you had where you had the impulse to do it, and then you didn't do the activation energy required to force yourself, Your emergency brake got pulled. I'm sitting right here. I'm not going up with those crazy people. I don't like to dance. I don't anyway. But what happened for me is I came up and I bumped into Rachel, and then we started talking, and next thing you know, she's tweeting. And we're friends. And boom. Get outside. That's where the magic is. That's where the 1 and 400 trillion exists. So everything I do, wait, okay, this is the last part, sorry. So one more thing that you can use, I call it the 5-second rule. Your mind can process a facial expression in 33 milliseconds. It can move pretty damn quick. The other thing that it does very quickly is if you have one of those little impulses that are pulling you, if you don't marry it with an action within 5 seconds, you pull the emergency brake and kill the idea. Kill it. If you have the impulse to get up and come dance while the band is playing, if you don't stand up in 5 seconds, you're going to pull the emergency brake. If you have an impulse about you were inspired by somebody's speech today, and you don't do something within 5 seconds, write a note, send yourself a text. Anything physical to marry it with the idea, you will pull the emergency brake and kill the idea. Your problem isn't ideas. Your problem is you don't act on them. You kill them. It's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault. You're doing it to yourself. Stop it. I'm counting on you. 1 and 400 trillion. You got stuff to do. And it's not going to happen in your head. So I want you to practice this today. When we go off to party, thank God it's coming soon because I think we all could use a cocktail. I want you to practice the 5-second rule. You see somebody and you think you have that impulse, they look interesting. Walk over there. You were inspired by somebody and you have a request, make it. That's why you're here. Experiment with it, and I think you'll be shocked about what happens. And one more thing, I want you to know that everything that I do, whether it's the radio show or the television show or the book that I wrote or the column, it's for you. And if there is anything that I can do, if I can do anything to make you do the things you don't want to do so you can have what you want, I will do it. But you need to walk over, you need to open your mouth, and you need to make the request. You got it? Good. Go do it. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, stand up. You have the impulse. Stand up. Thank you.
So I have a Facebook friend whose life seems perfect. She lives in a gorgeous house, and she has a really rewarding career. And she and her family go on all these exciting adventures together on the weekends. And I swear that they must take a professional photographer along with them, because no matter where they go or what they do, the whole family just looks beautiful. And she's always posting about how blessed she is and how grateful she is for the life that she has. And I get the feeling she's not just saying those things for the sake of Facebook, but she truly means it. How many of you have a friend kind of like that? And how many of you kind of don't like that person sometimes? We all do this, right? It's hard not to do. But that way of thinking costs us something. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is what our bad habits cost us. Maybe you scroll through your Facebook feed and you think, so what if I roll my eyes? It's just 5 seconds of my time. How could it be hurting me? Well, researchers have found that envying your friends on Facebook actually leads to depression. That's just one of the traps that our minds can set for us. Have you ever complained about your boss? Or Or looked at your friends' lives and thought, why do they have all the luck? Can't help thinking that way, right? That way of thinking seems small in the moment. In fact, it might even make you feel better in the moment. But that way of thinking is eating away at your mental strength. There's 3 kinds of destructive beliefs that make us less effective and rob us of our mental strength. The first one is unhealthy beliefs about ourselves. We tend to feel sorry for ourselves. And while it's okay to be sad when something bad happens, self-pity goes beyond that. It's when you start to magnify your misfortune. When you think things like, why do these things always have to happen to me? I shouldn't have to deal with it. That way of thinking keeps you stuck, keeps you focused on the problem, keeps you from finding a solution. And even when you can't create a solution, you can always take steps to make your life or somebody else's life better. But you can't do that when you're busy hosting your own pity party. The second type of destructive belief that holds us back is unhealthy beliefs about others. We think that other people can control us, and we give away our power. But as adults who live in a free country, there's very few things in life that you have to do. So when you say, I have to work late, you give away your power. Yeah, maybe there'll be consequences if you don't work late, but it's still a choice. Or when you say, my mother-in-law drives me crazy, you give away your power. Maybe she's not the nicest person on earth, but it's up to you how you respond to her because you're in control. The third type of unhealthy belief that holds us back is unhealthy beliefs about the world. We tend to think that the world owes us something. We think, if I put in enough hard work, then I deserve success. But expecting success to fall into your lap like some sort of cosmic reward will only lead to disappointment. But I know it's hard to give up our bad mental habits. It's hard to get rid of those unhealthy beliefs that we've carried around with us for so long. But you can't afford not to give them up. Because sooner or later, they're going to hit a time in your life where you need all the mental strength that you can muster. When I was 23 years old, I thought I had life all figured out. I graduated from grad school. I landed my first big job as a therapist. I got married, and I even bought a house. And I thought, this is going to be great. I've got this incredible jump start on success. What could go wrong? That all changed for me one day when I got a phone call from my sister. She said that our mother was found unresponsive, and she'd been taken to the hospital. My husband Lincoln and I jumped in the car and rushed to the hospital. We couldn't imagine what could be wrong. My mother was only 51. She didn't have any history of any kind of health problems. When we got to the hospital, doctors explained she'd had a brain aneurysm. And within 24 hours, my mother, who used to wake up in the morning saying, it's a great day to be alive, passed away. That news was devastating to me. My mother and I had been very close. As a therapist, I knew on an intellectual level how to go through grief. But knowing it and doing it can be 2 very different things. It took a long time before I felt like I was really healing. And then on the 3-year anniversary of my mother's death, some friends called and invited Lincoln and me to a basketball game. Coincidentally, it was being played at the same auditorium where I'd last seen my mother on the night before she passed away. I hadn't been back there since. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go back. But Lincoln and I talked about it, and ultimately we said, maybe that'll be a good way to honor her memory. So we went to the game, and we actually had a really good time with our friends. On the drive home that night, we talked about how great it was to finally be able to go back to that place and remember my mother with a smile, rather than all those feelings of sadness. But shortly after we got home that night, Lincoln said he didn't feel well. A few minutes later, he collapsed. I had to call for an ambulance. His family met me at the emergency room. We waited for what seemed like forever, till finally a doctor came out. But rather than taking us out back to see Lincoln, he took us back to a private room and sat us down and explained to us that Lincoln, who was the most adventurous person I'd ever met, was gone. We didn't know at the time, but he'd had a heart attack. He was only 26. He didn't have any history of heart problems. So now I found myself a 26-year-old widow, and I didn't have my mom. I thought, how am I going to get through this? And to describe that as a painful period in my life feels like an understatement. And it was during that time that I realized when you're really going through tough times, good habits aren't enough. It only takes 1 or 2 small habits to really hold you back. I worked as hard as I could, not just to create good habits in my life, but to get rid of those small habits, no matter how small they might seem. Throughout it all, I held out hope that someday life could get better. And eventually it did. A few years down the road, I met Steve, and we fell in love, and I got remarried. We sold the house that Lincoln and I had lived in, and we bought a new house in a new area, and I got a new job. But almost as quickly as I breathed my sigh of relief over that fresh start that I had, we got the news that Steve's dad had terminal cancer. And I started to think, why do these things always have to keep happening? Why do I have to keep losing all my loved ones? This isn't fair. But if I'd learned anything, it was that that way of thinking would hold me back. I knew I was going to need as much mental strength as I could muster to get through one more loss. So I sat down and I wrote a list of all the things mentally strong people don't do. And I read over that list. It was a reminder of all of those bad habits that I've done at one time or another that would keep me stuck. And I kept reading that list over and over, and I really needed it, because within a few weeks of writing it, Steve's dad passed away. My journey taught me that the secret to being mentally strong is that you have to give up your bad mental habits. Mental strength is a lot like physical strength. If you wanted to be physically strong, you'd need to go to the gym and lift weights. But if you really wanted to see results, you'd also have to give up eating junk food. Mental strength is the same. If you want to be mentally strong, you need good habits like practicing gratitude. But you also have to give up bad habits like resenting somebody else's success. No matter how often that happens, it'll hold you back. So, how do you train your brain to think differently? How do you give up those bad mental habits that you've carried around with you? It starts by countering those unhealthy beliefs that I talked about with healthier ones. For example, unhealthy beliefs about ourselves mostly come about because we're uncomfortable with our feelings. Feeling sad or hurt or angry or scared, those things are all uncomfortable. So we go to great lengths to avoid that discomfort. We try to escape it by doing things like hosting a pity party. And although that's a temporary distraction, it just prolongs the pain. The only way to get through uncomfortable emotions, the only way to deal with them is that you have to go through them, to let yourself feel sad and then move on, and to gain confidence in your ability to deal with that discomfort. Unhealthy beliefs about others come about because we compare ourselves to other people. We think that they're either above us or below us, or we think that they can control how we feel or that we can control how they behave, or we blame them for holding us back. But really, it's our own choices that do that. You have to accept that you're your own person and other people are separate from you. The only person you should compare yourself to is the person that you were yesterday. And unhealthy beliefs about the world come about because deep down, we want the world to be fair. We now want to think that if we put in enough good deeds, enough good things will happen to us. or if we tough it out through enough bad times, we'll get some sort of reward. But ultimately, you have to accept that life isn't fair. And that can be liberating. Yeah, it means you won't necessarily be rewarded for your goodness, but it also means no matter how much you've suffered, you're not doomed to keep suffering. The world doesn't work that way. Your world is what you make it. But of course, before you can change your world, you have to believe that you can change it. I once worked with this man who'd been diabetic for years. His doctor referred him to therapy because he had some bad mental habits that were starting to affect his physical health. His mother had died from complications of diabetes at a young age, so he just believed he was doomed, and he'd given up trying to manage his blood sugar altogether. In fact, his blood sugar had gotten so high lately that it was starting to affect his vision, and he had his driver's license taken away, and his world was shrinking. When he came into my office, it was clear he knew all the things he could do to manage his blood sugar. He just didn't think it was worth the effort. But eventually, he agreed to make one small change. He said, I'll give up my 2-liter-a-day Pepsi habit, and I'll trade it in for Diet Pepsi. And he couldn't believe how quickly his numbers started to improve. And even though he came in every week to remind me how horrible Diet Pepsi tasted, he stuck with it. And once he started to see a little bit of improvement, he said, well, maybe I could look at some of my other habits. And he said I could trade in my nightly bowl of ice cream for a snack with a little less sugar. And then one day he was at a thrift store with some friends, and he found this beat-up old exercise bike. He bought it for a couple of bucks,